Some NFL news and notes with John McMullen here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. As the newest Eagle met with the media today, and he will get his first chance to get out on the field for OTAs on Tuesday. And Johnny Mack joins us now live, I believe, from the NovaCare Center, where you just got a chance to hear from LeGarrette Blount there, John, and interested to hear his reasoning for Philadelphia, why Philly stood out to him. Was it because he didn't have a lot of suitors, or is this just the place he wanted to be?
Well, he claims he chose Philadelphia because he likes the way they play ball, but I think it had more to do with limited opportunities. He did have other contracts on the table from Arizona and Detroit. The Giants were also kind of kicking the tires and thinking about bringing him in. I think, you get the feeling he would be back in New England if at all possible, but they went in a different direction, and he felt this was the best of his other alternatives.
Yeah, I know there were some teams out there that, potentially had some interest in him. The Giants and the Cardinals were kind of reported out there. But, the fact that he comes to Philadelphia on the one-year deal here, I guess he envisions an opportunity maybe to show that he can get some more money next year.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you take a look at the Cardinals, for instance, because they did offer him a contract. They have one of the best running backs in football. So you can kind of understand in their committee he was going to be the second or third guy, whereas here he's got every opportunity to be the guy. And obviously, the more touches you get, the more opportunities you get. He's never going to get – Mike, the running back market in this league. You've seen it throughout this entire offseason. At his age, he's now past 30. He's going to be 31. He's never going to get that big money deal. It's just the way the NFL is now. But if he plays well, sure, he can continue playing and at least making a decent amount of money.
Yeah, as you mentioned, LeGarrette Blount said he chose Philly because, quote, I thought it was the best fit for me, the way they do things around here. I like the way they play ball. So, how does he envision fitting into this team? What does he think his role, what did they tell him his role will be?
Well, he said he wasn't given a role just yet, and that's understandable because obviously we're very early in the process, but he sees the depth chart. His agent sees the depth chart, and he knows what the opportunity is here. And, hey, right now the two top backs that he'll be competing with are Darren Sproles, who's better suited to be a third down guy, and Wendell Smallwood, who doesn't have much experience. LeGarrette Blount, on the other hand, has 2 1,000-yard seasons in his career. He's got 18 touchdowns coming off last season. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. I like his chances to be the starting running back on this team.
John, you echo my next question, which is it sounds like opportunity then might be the number one reason that LeGarrette Blount is here, the opportunity to get on that field and play a lot.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was it. As I mentioned, Arizona is one of the teams that had a contract out and wanted him in, but they have a great running back. The Detroit Lions were the other, and they need help at the position, but they do have some nice bodies. Theo Riddick, who's probably a better, if anything, third down back than Darren Sproles. He might be the best pass-catching back in football. And they also have Amir Abdullah, who's a young back who's had injury problems, but he's got a lot of significant talent. And if he was able to stay healthy, he kind of knows he would lose some playing time to him. So from that standpoint, the 3 teams that actually offered him contracts, it's pretty evident the best one he has a chance to play the most significant snaps for is the Eagles.
John, I know that he also talked about his short yardage success. The quote was, it's a mindset, and you've got to know that's what you get before you're expected to get that big play. That's an area that cost the Eagles in at least a game or 2 last season.
Yeah, he's great at it. 3rd and 4th and short. He averaged 5.4 yards a carry. So I think, one of the things that stood out to me is he talked about situational football, and I think that's one of the underplayed things, especially with younger guys. They don't realize the situation they're in. He's a very smart player. He understands if it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, what he's got to do. He's not going to be lost in the moment, and he's going to get you that yard basically every time. And the Eagles were 27th in the NFL last season in those kind of circumstances. And now they're getting one of the best as far as short yardage goes. He was also, though, and this plays into it as well, he was very complimentary, as he should be, of Tom Brady. And he said, look, he admitted when Tom is on the field, you have to give him a ton of respect, the opposing defense, and he makes it a lot easier. And he admitted that.
John, the Eagles list him at 250 pounds. Does LeGarrette Blount really look that big?
That's a big Blount, man.
Dude. He is a big dude. And last week I was shocked at just how small Donnell Pumphrey was when you see him up close. And this week is the exact opposite. He is bigger than every linebacker on this team. He is a massive guy, and he's in shape. It's not like a bad thing. He's just a really, really big running back.
Wow. That is a big dude. Some of the pictures, posted on Twitter that I'm seeing him at the he's a big guy. You see him with his uniform on. He looks like a big guy, but without it, man, he's a big dude there. Let me ask you, John. We had some callers earlier bring this up, and I remember the altercation he got in at Oregon, where he punched a guy from Boise in the face. Got suspended for the year. He started his career in Tampa. He was in Pittsburgh. I recall him getting into some trouble with marijuana, I believe. Right? Was that what it was? So he does have a little.
Yeah. On the way to the airport to play the Eagles, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, him and Bell.
In the preseason. Yeah, and sorry, there's some lawn work going on here at the NovaCare complex. But, Le'Veon Bell and him got in trouble at the same time in that issue. He's not the first NFL player to get in trouble with marijuana. He's not going to be the last one. And I think, he's been in the NFL for 8 years now. I think it's time to let the Oregon stuff go. He's as I said, he's a very
well. Somebody suggested a listener called and was wondering if he's a bad locker room guy or if he's off the field stuff's going to carry over. I said, look, if he was a bad locker room guy, it's like you have the puppy who needs to be potty trained. You send him to the dog guy, and you get back a new dog almost, right? I mean, you send him to New England, you get a new guy.
Yeah, you do. That's part of it, and New England's a little bit different. But I wouldn't say LeGarrette was that type of guy anyway. I think if you look at players like Randy Moss and Corey Dillon, maybe as they got into the New England way, so to speak, LeGarrette's actually a really good teammate, and I don't think that changed much from whether it's in New England or Pittsburgh or Tampa, and he'll be a good teammate here.
Spending a few minutes with John McMullen. So how do you see the carries, John, then being split up? Because there are 4 guys. Is there an odd man out? Is there a lead back? You kind of hinted that you thought Blount might be the lead back, but how do you break it down then of who gets the carries?
Yeah, I think he'll be the lead back, and I think, one of the down aspects of his game is the fact that he's not a very good receiver. I think his career high in receptions is like 15, so he's not going to catch the football. So you need a committee, and it's obviously the most logical one would be that LeGarrette carries the load. Darren Sproles is the third down back. So Wendell Smallwood is probably the odd man out as we speak today, but as you go through an NFL season, you're going to need your third running back at some point during a 16-game schedule, so he'll get his touches. And I think Donnell Pumphrey, this will be sort of a red shirt year. And then when we come back to 2018, when Darren is retired, he'll be able to take over that role.
Blount said that he feels pretty good despite 300-plus carries last season. Do you see him being that kind of guy here, 300-plus carries and able to come through healthy?
Well, you'd like to see that. I think he was a 299 last year. Until we see Doug Peterson actually commit to the running game, I don't know if you can expect a running back to carry it that many times. But I would love to see that number. I would love to see 299 for whatever he had, 1,100 yards and 18 touchdowns. I mean, that'd be phenomenal. I think you'll probably see more in the line of 220 or something of that nature.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. Our NFL news and notes here with LeGarrette Blount meeting the media today. Anything else that, he's a guy with 18 touchdowns. Does he feel disrespected that the Patriots didn't want him back or weren't really aggressive coming after him? Did you felt like a guy that has something to prove here or just, hey, business as usual in the NFL?
I think he's been around long enough to understand that's the market, and sure, he's upset the fact that he didn't sign till mid-May. He's probably upset that he put together that kind of year for the Patriots, and they didn't really want to bring him back. All of that plays into it, but we saw the same story with any number of backs, starting with Adrian Peterson, Eddie Lacy, Latavius Murray. All these backs signed essentially one-year deals for little money, and that's just the nature of that position in today's NFL.
Kind of like DeMarco Murray, right? He wanted to go back to Dallas. They didn't want him. He came to Philly and just kind of had like separation anxiety almost.
Yeah, he did. And I think he had separation anxiety from that offensive line as well. And you add into it that Chip Kelly's calling the plays. So, DeMarco had a nice bounce-back season, obviously, in Tennessee. So he obviously still had something left. But even him, if he goes on the open market as well, he'll face the same thing these guys are facing. And the fact is that nobody wants to pay running backs.
John, you mentioned the O-line. How does Blount fit in behind the Eagles' offensive line?
Well, I think the Eagles have a chance to have a very good offensive line. They've certainly built up the depth, so I think they're more equipped to handle a potential injury. You hope you don't have to deal with another suspension. But you also have to keep an eye on Jason Peters, obviously, because of his age and his injury history. You have to keep an eye on Jason Kelsey. But the core of this line, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, and a number of the younger guys, we always talk about how much the Eagles like Isaac Seumalo, and they do. It's not Dallas, it's not Oakland, but the Eagles probably have a top 10 offensive line on paper, so he'll do just fine.
So all this considered, John, why does New England get rid of an 18-touchdown, 12,000-yard guy? That's what Mike and I are trying to scratch our heads about and figure out that, is there something New England knows that they're not telling the rest of the league?
Yeah, they know they have Tom Brady, and Mike Gillislee will go in there and do the same thing. And he's younger. And he's set up for a longer lifespan, career span in New England. I mean, we understand they're just about getting better every year. And it doesn't matter what your resume says. If they think they can improve at a particular position, they're going to do it. And they felt going younger was the better way to go, and we'll see how it works out. But their history is pretty good with that kind of thing.
Any details on the contract coming out?
Yeah, he got basically $1.3 million guaranteed, and he's got a chance to make upwards of just under $3 million if he reaches incentives. So from a cost standpoint, it's a very good contract for the Eagles, and that's to be expected when it's May 17th and you're still on the street.
Does he say anything? Carson Wentz seems to come up a lot in these press conferences. Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, you bring guys in. They all seem to think that Wentz is a guy they want to play with. This is a guy that played with Tom Brady. I can't imagine he thinks he's getting an upgrade there. But how much is Wentz?
Well, that was when Wentz was brought up. We asked LeGarrette why he was so successful in short yardage circumstances, and his answer was basically, as Pete mentioned, part of it's situational football, part of it's understanding, and the other part was having Tom Brady in the fact that how easy he made things to do. And then came the question, what about Carson Wentz? And obviously, you can't compare Carson Wentz to Tom Brady. It would be silly. But he did mention he's one of the better young quarterbacks in this league, and I think that's the theory from most players.
Hey, just trying to getting some of the transcript stuff and seeing some of the quotes coming out. Blount said that New England wanted him back. He enjoyed playing there, but that he thought that the Eagles were the best fit for him. You buying that?
No. Obviously, he got a little bit more money. New England signed him to that May 9th tender, but that was about getting a compensatory pick for when he signed elsewhere, which would have guaranteed him, I think, 1.2. So he got a little bit more guaranteed. But remember, New England signed Gillislee as a restricted free agent. They're paying him, I think, over $3 million. So they had the budget to do it. They just went in a different direction. But certainly, there's some ego involved, and he's always going to say he landed where he wanted to land it, but nobody's not going to want to play with Tom Brady. I mean, that's if you understand the NFL, you kind of understand that.
John, not the only Patriot guy to come from the Patriots to the Eagles now in this offseason. Did Chris Long have any role in this at all? Maybe you recruiting LeGarrette Blount to Philadelphia?
No, we asked them that. The two are friends, and they talk, and they certainly chat, but I don't think there was anything other than they're excited to be back together, and they get along. And I think that's the kind of veteran leadership you need for the Eagles, because they both understand, obviously, how to win. They both understand what you need to do to win, and they can hopefully show that to some of the younger players.
I'm glad you brought that up, because earlier you talked about it's time to let the Oregon stuff be in the past and some of his off-the-field behavior be in the past. What kind of guy do you think LeGarrette Blount will be in the room, and what kind of mentor do you think he'll be to these other running backs?
Yeah, I think he'll be a good one. As I mentioned, he's a very bright guy. He's got a high football IQ, and it just comes across well. So I think he'll be good for the younger players. And obviously the Eagles have a lot of young running backs, starting with Wendell Smallwood and Donnell Pumphrey, and you sort of add Corey Clement to that mix. So they can look at this guy and he can teach them how to be professional. So I think that's a positive.
What does this mean, John, for the Eagles salary cap-wise? How did they make room to fit Blount in? Because we've talked a lot about the Eagles still needing to clear out space.
Yeah, well, give Howie the gold star again. Nobody, according to the NFLPA figures, nobody has less salary cap space than the Eagles right now, but he always finds a way. And, whether it's moving a decimal point over, I don't want to say he's, Bernie Madoff, but Howie has a way of manipulating figures where it's amazing. And we always say, how can the Eagles do this? How can the Eagles do that? And then bang, they do it.
You mentioned Corey Clement a minute ago, too, and that was the guy that they kind of signed as an undrafted free agent for the big body guy. Does this mean that he's more likely to end up on the practice squad? Is his future chances to make the roster in jeopardy now? What does this mean for Corey Clement?
Yeah, I think if you look at it on paper, it doesn't look good for him right now with the 53-man roster, but you have to realize that this is a sport that is rife with injuries. So Wendell Smallwood, Donnell Pumphrey, the guys you expect to make the roster, you never know what's going to happen with them. So you can't say that. But if you think about the Eagles will probably keep 4 running backs, well, then it's going to be Blount, it's going to be Sproles, it's going to be Smallwood, and it's going to be Pumphrey. And that would probably send Corey Clement to the practice squad.
All right, NFL News and Notes, Johnny Mack here with us, John McMullen, at JF McMullen. Follow his national NFL columns at FanRag Sports NFL. Real quick, John, I thought this story was interesting. The Rams Stadium opening has been delayed till 2020. They said weather was a factor. They had rain in Southern California. They couldn't figure out how to do construction in the rain out there.
Yeah, 3 months of historic rain.
How about it?
In California, and they can't, and their construction slows down. Yeah, I guess we're used to it more on the East Coast and the Northeast weather-wise. But
delayed the stadium by a year.
Yeah, it's a setback, obviously. I mean, that's going to be projected to be, sort of even a bigger kind of palace than even Jerry Jones built in Arlington. And it's not only the NFL. There's going to be an entire campus that houses NFL media, so it's bigger. And then when you talk about Los Angeles as a whole, they want to get that back in the mix for potential future Super Bowls.
Right.
So the fact that it's kicked back a year, it's not good. And the San Diego Chargers more so because they got to play in a soccer stadium for an extra year. And I keep calling them San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers. But it'll get done, and the Chargers and Rams will share like the Jets and Giants.
All right, the Rams Stadium scheduled to open in 2019, being pushed back to 2020 due to weather delays. John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys.